Deep down, sinking slow, under oceans unknown,
on the
silent
river.
whispers from the reef, life's chaos beneath the sea. Colors sharp, vibrant glow, in the deep where creatures show. Watch the dance of the waves, hidden stories in the caves. Below the blue, we find truth in the deep. Forget our youth, a lost soul swimming free.
Come in and find a bolt about that big. Found it.
Just you and me. Corals twist with gentle grace, where the light finds a place.
Today we are heading over to Loggerhead Key for snorkeling and a beach picnic, then headed back to Garden Key for a tour of Fort Jefferson.
Songs of whales, ghosts of ships and
Loggerhead Key is the largest island in the Dry Tortugas National Park, but despite its size, it still feels incredibly remote. It sits about 3 miles east of Garden Key and Fort Jefferson, and once you leave the fort behind, it really feels like you're stepping away from civilization. The island gets its name from the loggerhead sea turtles that nest here. Loggerhead Key is one of the most important nesting sites in Dry Tortugas, especially loggerheads, green turtles, and occasionally hawkbills. During nesting season, much of the island is carefully protected to give turtles space to lay their eggs undisturbed. Loggerhead Lighthouse, built in 1858, is the tallest structure in the Dry Tortugas and one of the most recognizable landmarks in the park. Unlike the lighthouse on Garden Key, this one is no longer active, but still plays an important role as a historic structure. Keeper's house nearby was once home to lighthouse keepers and later caretakers who helped maintain the island under some very isolated conditions. Loggerhead Key has no fresh water, no docks, and no development, which is part of what keeps it so pristine. Access is limited, and even today, overnight stays are not allowed. The island is managed entirely as a protected national area, and human impact is kept to an absolute minimum. On the north side of the island is Little Africa, named for its distinctive shape. This reef is famous for its coral health and diversity, largely because it's far from heavy boat traffic and fishing pressure found in more accessible parts of the Keys. Strong currents here help keep the water clear and nutrient rich, which supports large coral heads and thriving marine life. Snorkeling Little Africa feels like stepping into an aquarium. You see massive brain coral, elkhorn, staghorn coral, schools of reef fish, grouper tucked into ledges, lobster hiding in crevices, cruising barracuda, eagle rays, and sea turtles gliding through the water. It's widely considered one of the best snorkel and dive sites in the Dry Tortugas. The beaches on Loggerhead Key are beautiful, but can be challenging. Conditions change quickly with wind and swell, and landing a dinghy requires some planning. But when it lines up just right, the reward is quiet beaches, crystal clear water, and the rare feeling of having an entire island almost to yourself. Walking around the island, you'll notice how untouched it feels. Seabirds nest here, the vegetation is low and hardy, and there are a real sense that nature, not people, is in charge here. Laguerre Key isn't about amenities or convenience, it's about experiencing the Dry Tortugas in its most raw and natural form. Getting off the boat and crossing the dock, you see the main entrance to the fort. As you cross the drawbridge, you get a great view of the surrounding moat, which completely encircles the structure. To the right side of the entrance is the gift shop and visitor information center. All around the island there are signs explaining the history of the fort and the Dry Tortugas. Fresh water was always a challenge out here, and the fort relied on massive cisterns that collected rainwater to supply everyone living inside. You can still see original equipment and tools that were used while the fort was active. One of the more modern exhibits is this boat, which was used by Cuban asylum seekers in the early 2000s to make dangerous crossings from Cuba to Florida, a powerful reminder that this place has spanned centuries of history. This area here was used for ammunition storage, powder barrels, cannonballs, and weapons. The floor of the building was designed to be off the ground to keep the supplies out of standing water and dry. Nearby is the hot shot furnace, where cannonballs could be heated red hot before being fired. The balls were placed at the top of the ramp and slowly rolled down towards the fire, heating as they went. The idea was to set enemy ships ablaze. On the parade grounds, you can still see the remnants of officer quarters and soldier barracks. The bakery had the unbelievable task of feeding hundreds of soldiers stationed here, and accounts say the bread often came with extra protein, bugs included. Going up to the second floor, be careful, the spiral staircases were built for battle in mind, not tall people. The chapel is located in the northwest corner of the fort. Another important part of the fort's history is the hospital. Disease was a constant threat out here, especially yellow fever, which swept through the fort multiple times in the 1800s. Mosquitoes were everywhere, and at the time no one understood how the disease was spread, making outbreaks especially deadly. The fort's surgeon, Dr. Joseph Smith, played a major role during these epidemics. He was responsible for treating soldiers and prisoners alike. Medical care was very limited, and despite everyone's best efforts, many people didn't survive. Because of the fear of infection, the sick were often taken away from the fort to a nearby Hospital Key, a small island used specifically to isolate patients with contagious diseases. It was essentially a quarantine island, meant to protect the rest of the garrison from outbreaks. Many of those who died from yellow fever and other illnesses were buried on that island, making it one of the more somber and lesser known parts of the Dry Tortugas. During the Civil War, the fort was repurposed as a military prison. The most famous prisoner was Dr. Samuel Mudd, who was imprisoned there for treating John Wilkes Booth after the assassination of President Abraham Lincoln. The prisoners would often get standing water in their cells so they would use spoons to create little reservoirs on the floor to collect the rain. The lighthouse still sits atop the fort, and during wartime it could be extinguished to confuse or disorient the ships navigating the area. During the construction, the engineers planned for over 400 cannons to be placed around the fort. This equates to about 1 cannon per soldier in the fort. On the walls, soldiers had protection from enemy fire and access to custom-built tunnels that allowed supplies to be moved up from the ground level using a pulley and rope system. One of my favorite ways to really take in Fort Jefferson is by walking along the outer wall of the moat. The moat completely surrounds the fort and is designed as a defensive barrier, making it nearly impossible for attackers to reach the walls without being exposed. As you walk the perimeter, you get a unique perspective of how massive this structure really is. Fort Jefferson is the largest masonry fort in the Western Hemisphere, built with over 16 million bricks. The scale really hits you when you're standing out here at water level. From the outer wall, you get uninterrupted views of open ocean stretching to the horizon. Imagine standing guard out here in 1800, surrounded by water in every direction, months away from home, with supply ships being your only connection to the outside world. It's a peaceful ending for a place that was once built entirely for war, and a reminder that time has turned this fortress into one of the most unique and beautiful spots in the Florida Keys.